Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor.
It's Sam Panetta.
And here we are for another installment of Ask Aureus Anything, our weekly live Q&A.
This is episode number 36.
36. It's been a bit of fun, and we have some great stuff to discuss this evening. So for those of you who don't know, our Ask Aureus Anything is where we make time every week to spend an hour to talk about current events in wealth, finance, business, investing, everything in between. Give you an opportunity to ask us questions, contribute to the conversation, give us your opinion, and have a bit of friendly banter.
Absolutely. So we gather a few questions during the week and a few of the trending articles. But if you're sitting there and you guys have questions, shoot them at us, because we're going to give you priority because you've shown up and you're here live.
Yep. Now, we've got some great things we've been working on behind the scenes. So the Wealth Mentor community, which is our community where we share regular content, insights, and other value adds. We've actually recently just announced that we're able to give away free wills to our members of the Wealth Mentor community. Something we've been working on very closely with our estate planning partners. And it's just one of the many ways that you get value as part of being part of the community. So if you're not already a member, make sure you do join to get the most of your experience.
Absolutely.
Now, before we dive in, general advice warning: everything we talk about is general in nature. Before you apply it to your personal situation, just make sure you do take personal advice.
Oh. Has come up this week. Can you guys see us?
Here we go. Got disconnected. That's the first time.
Are we back?
I think we're back. We're back.
All right. So I hope you guys didn't miss out on anything. Those were an exciting couple of seconds. All right. So the first article that we're going to talk about this week is Amazon Australia adds pantry foods and stepping up pressure on the supermarkets. So this is a big beast, Amazon. Everyone knows what they do. They sell absolutely everything, absolutely everywhere. And now they're adding pantry foods to the list.
It's interesting. I've done a lot of research into Amazon as a business, and their business model is very, very simple. Now, obviously, Amazon started as an online book distribution at the very early stages of the internet. And Jeff Bezos has had a very simple methodology. He doesn't need to come up with any new ideas. It's a matter of approaching traditional industries and just throwing as much money as they possibly can at it to grow it to a scale where they essentially are more competitive than anyone else.
I remember something that he said, right, Jeff Bezos, he said that in business, don't focus on the variables that can change. He goes, focus on the core things that will always stay the same. Mm-hmm. And he said that for him, his two core principles are that his customers are always going to want the cheapest price, and they're always going to want the products delivered as fast as possible. Yeah. So he concentrates, as you said, getting to massive scale, getting them out as fast as he can, and then selling it as small as margins as he absolutely can. And now he's selling food, which is a bit weird.
Well, it works for him, man. Look, he's not the world's richest man for no reason, right? The business model works. They have the economy of scale. They've got the resources. They've got the infrastructure. They've got the supply chains to be able to execute on these strategies. And look, I think it's great. I think that particularly when we're talking about FMCG space in Australia, there are obviously pretty much a duopoly between.
So what's FMCG for those who don't know?
FMCG is basically supermarkets, food, beverage, and consumable goods. So Coles and Woolworths are the major players in the space. They dominate the space. And even those businesses have acquired and diversified outside of normal consumer goods.
Well, how do you order your groceries? Do you go to the shops or do you order them online?
I go to the shops.
Yeah, my wife orders them online.
So I'm not that organised. Your wife's very organised.
She's very organised. So she'll go to buy like fresh fruit and fresh meat from a butcher and from a fruit market, but essentially everything else she orders online now.
Okay. See, I'm the type of person that I don't prepare when I go shopping. So I just stroll in the supermarket. Oh, that looks good. I'll grab some of that. So look, I wish I didn't have to do it, but I'm not modern enough to jump online to buy my groceries. So,
can Amazon become a real threat to established supermarkets in Australia?
Well, it becomes a threat to any industry. The thing about the model is that it will always challenge industries that may not necessarily feel that they can be challenged. And then I think it's important that it does happen in this space. I think the other place where I believe it's important is in other areas like financial services. However, you've got to realize that Amazon and these big businesses have a very particular way that they approach their value proposition. It is low touch, it is not bespoke, it is cookie cutter, and as much volume as possible. So there's always going to be room for boutique players in the market. And so because of this, I think that they've got a place, which is good.
Yeah. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that Amazon, would you buy food from Amazon, or is that just too weird? Let us know. Let us know your thoughts.
Sal said he likes food.
I'm glad he does. If he didn't, if you don't eat, you die, and all that sort of stuff.
Well, look, I think that I've always followed Sal's recommendations when it comes to food. I followed his recommendation last night. Went to Kebab World and woke up 3 a.m. just the thirstiest man in this world.
Did you really?
I did, mate. It was terrible. It was the worst thing that ever happened to me. So thanks for that one, Sal.
All right. So you guys that are watching, if you have any questions or you want to comment on anything that we're talking about, please do so.
Beautiful. So the next one here is BlackRock, the world's largest money manager. So its net flows softened in the third quarter as nervous investors yanked money from its products.
So what does that mean in simple terms?
So very simply, we need to understand when it comes to investing, particularly with these big investment businesses like BlackRock, fund inflows, so money being contributed into their funds, and outflows are a very good indication of investor sentiment or what people believe is going to be happening. Now, we've got to realise that whenever we start seeing inflows soften, it can be an indication of people getting concerned, getting worried about what's going to come. Now, there's definitely something on the horizon. We've spoken about this before. Typically, most share markets operate in kind of 4-year cycles. Typically, on average, every 1 in 4 years is a negative year, and 3 out of 4 years is a positive year. When we track back to 1926, it's always been the case. You pretty much set your watch to it. However, we've seen since the global financial crisis, share markets pretty much go from strength to strength. There's, of course, been things that have created short-term fluctuations. There's been, debt issues in the US. We've seen debt issues in Europe. We've seen other kind of geopolitical situations occurring, which has had very small blips on the radar. But overall, the share market has gone relatively unscathed since 2008.
Well, I think the American stock market has had 10 up years in a row, hasn't it? That's phenomenal. I think that's unheard of. I think it's the record.
It's unprecedented. So what that means is that if history proves us right, and if history does happen to repeat itself, then it is likely that there is going to be some type of correction, meaning that there is a fall in the market of less than 20%, or a recession where there is a fall in the market more than 20%. I probably think that we are going to have some type of recessionary period, but this presents an opportunity. I think people tend to follow the pack mentality when it comes to investing.
Absolutely.
I've seen it in the property market. Ridiculous people punching on the front lawn of an auction in DY, fighting over a property that they paid $200,000 over market value for. Now they're kicking themselves. Same thing does happen with the share market. Not so much emotion involved, because people aren't going to pay 20% over the market price for BHP because they like the CEO. It's more so the fear of missing out that drives them to invest at the wrong times. Now, does this mean you shouldn't be investing now? No. For most of our clients, we use what's called a dollar cost averaging strategy. We set up an investment strategy. We continue to contribute each and every single month, irrespective of whatever the market is doing, and we don't worry about what happens. It just takes care of itself. So it's just one of those things.
And it's totally counterintuitive, isn't it? Like I've had this conversation with so many people. They want to invest, and they think that to invest in the stock market, you need to be, buying low and selling high, and all those other really cool sayings that Wall Street popularized. Very difficult. Some people have made billions out of it. Most people have not. So the easiest way, and most of the time the most effective way of investing in the stock market, is just to continue investing in the stock market. If it goes up, great, you're making money. If it goes down, great, you're buying more shares at a better price. So it's a bit of a win-win.
100%. Yeah, so it's important. Take a lot of this stuff with a grain of salt. It's just a way to continue the conversation. There's two types of people. There's people that take action, and there's people that find an excuse. So you find a way, you find an excuse, you pick which one you want to take.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you guys, what's your view on share markets? What does this type of information do to you emotionally? Is it something that makes you really nervous and you're likely to sit on your hands, or do you view this as an opportunity? I'm interested to hear your.
Do you even care? Do you even care what the stock market does?
Do you even care what we say? Why are you even here?
All right. So for anyone who's watching, if you guys have any questions or comments, please shoot them out at us. We're here to participate in the banter.
Our better halves are both here, Sam.
Yeah, see, they're good. They're good.
Supportive,
they're good girlfriends, good wives,
supportive girls.
Very good.
They take our commentary seriously. It's great to have them.
Well, we're always at work, mate. So this is the most time they get to spend with us.
Exactly
when we're on Ask Aureus anything.
This is our date night, basically.
We're bonding right now.
We're bonding.
Absolutely.
We're actually sharing a really close and memorable moment.
Yeah, Anna and Elise, are you guys happy with the bonding that's happening right now?
You having as much fun as we are.
All right. So the next article that popped up on our radar this week is property fund managers have enjoyed the best pay increases in the past year, helped by the recent Royal Commission and takeovers. Now, you know what? I wouldn't think that's the case. Like, I'm surprised So let's explain what it is, right? So you can invest in fund managers who then go and invest. You give them your money, and then they go out and invest that in property. Now, people were talking about it just then. People do it in shares. People do that in property as well. And they're saying that property fund managers have received the biggest pay increases that they have in years. And I think that's funny because I understand, like, over the past 5 or 6 years that Sydney was doing great, but we're at the end of the cycle now. So I think they're a little bit behind and probably a little bit out of touch to what's actually going on in property markets at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So I think there's a couple of angles to this. So angle number one is that property as a whole escaped relatively unscathed from the Royal Commission. Pretty much every other part of the financial services industry got pretty well smashed. And I'm sure that property is going to have its day. It will happen.
Absolutely.
Further to that, commercial property is primarily the types of assets that are inside these commercial property or these property funds. So we're talking about the big buildings that you see in the city, your A&P buildings, all of those types of things. Now, commercial property is very closely linked to the success of business because, of course, businesses run out of commercial property. So performance of commercial property is based on supply and demand, and a good measure of that is vacancy. So vacancy rates are very low. There is good commercial properties are very hard to come by. Most of these portfolios are doing extremely well, paying out good returns to shareholders, typically paying very high income because yields are doing well. So therefore, then that results in pay increases for these fund managers. Now, what is interesting is pay increases have been indicated to increase by up to 8%. What's funny is that a typical yield on a commercial property or most of these funds is about 8%. So I don't know if that's just a coincidence. In any case, look, if they're doing their job, if they're providing returns to investors, and good on them, they should get paid.
So you know what didn't get unscathed in the GFC was these actual property funds.
Correct.
They got smashed. Some of them got smashed worse than the stock market
100%.
itself. Why do you think that's the case?
Leverage.
They just had too much debt.
Correct. So in a lot of these property investments, they have to use leverage as a way of buying these assets, these big lumpy assets. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in assets. So typically, most of the biggest issues of these funds and why they do perform so well is that leverage is high. So of course, the amount of money that you have invested is magnified by the amount of leverage that's in the portfolio. In many cases, a lot of these funds have leverage of around about 50%, which is quite high.
And it used to be higher, and I think they dropped the amount of leverage they could use because it was just too dangerous.
Well, there was a couple of things that changed. So one, they didn't have to disclose exactly the amount of leverage that was being used.
Previously.
Correct. And of course, they wanted to make sure that they could buffer against risk in the event of there being some sort of flash crash. So look, it's one of those things. You should never be approaching any investment, and look a little bit off track here, in isolation. You should have a diversified portfolio. listed property does have its place in a portfolio, but it is typically a very small percentage. Don't always chase returns.
Absolutely, and it's worth noting that the cost of money with commercial property is a lot higher than with residential property. So when we're talking about borrowing money here, we're not talking the 4% that your typical property investor would pay. We're talking 6 or 7%, which is slightly just under what the yields are on those properties. So you need to take that into account as well. It's a riskier space than your typical mum and dad buying a unit as a residential investment.
Yep, exactly right. Now, this is a little bit of controversial subject, Sam. I know you love this one. So Aldi slams loyalty programs of rivals as schemes that benefit shareholders, not shoppers. So, as you probably all know, most of the big supermarket chains have these points programs, whether it be like Flybuys or Woolworths points or whatever. And Aldi has always had a very firm stance of getting rid of the gimmicks, pricing things as they should be and being very competitive. And essentially passing on the appropriate levels of discount to their customers. I guess what they mean by this is that points programs in general are generally not what they are made out to be. They are a gimmick. They're a gimmick that has a very small return on investment for what you're paying, because of course somebody's got to pay for it. Nothing is given away for free. It's all priced in. Now, typically points programs are integrated because the costs of your goods that you're buying are more expensive. So in turn, your whole shopping experience is more expensive compared to other providers who don't have it. We see this with points credit cards. We see this with frequent flyer programs, all of these things that are very, very much gimmicks. So look, I think they're right.
Look, I don't get involved with any of this stuff. I've never had a points card. I've never had credit cards that have like rewards or anything on it. They're very complex. 99.9% of people who have them do not understand them. I don't understand them. I think they complicate money more than it needs to be. And the more, here's the thing, right? And you'll attest to this. The more confused the consumer is, the easier it is to take advantage of them. 100%. So a lot of these guys have been playing this game for a long time where they just confuse the shit out of everyone and then they can rob them and they don't even know they're being robbed. So I would be staying away from any sorts of reward programs or things like that. I just don't think it's necessary to achieve your goals.
No, exactly right. I think that's important. What do you think about rewards programs? Do you use rewards programs? So you're constantly trying to rack up those points to...
Do you love a bit of credit card rewards, flybys?
Because as part of my home loan package, I've got a rewards card.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how many points I've got. I've never got a benefit.
No. I get a statement once a year. I've had my same credit card since I was 18, so I'm 12 years deep now. I've never received a benefit from it. I only got it because it comes with my home loan. I don't know how to use it. I'm a simple man. All right. So the next article that's popped up on our radar this week is US judge approves settlement between the SEC, Tesla, and Elon Musk. So Elon Musk, Jackson loves him. He's a wild punter. He's a wild punter, that bloke. He jumped on Twitter the other day. He said that he's taken Tesla private. The share price rocketed. He went out, had a joint with Snoop Dogg, was saying, who did he do that with? Joe Rogan. The share price tanked, and then the whole offer was fraudulent. It was like 42 because of he was trying to impress his girlfriend or something. Now we're talking about a billionaire who's running a multi-billion-dollar business is doing this, and no wonder he got in the shit. People would have made and lost hundreds of millions of dollars based on this guy just having a crack on Twitter one night. He was probably a couple of beers in. I don't know.
Yeah, look, I think it's important that he gets held accountable. Because obviously there's been a lot of things that he's, I guess, been in a bit of trouble and a bit of hot water for lately. But in this particular instance, he said that he'd secured funding for taking Tesla private at $420 a share. It was complete and utter BS. There was nothing confirmed. And the SEC have basically said that he needs to pay $20 million. Which, look, in the grand scheme of things, is probably a bit of a slap on the wrist for him based on his on his net worth. And he's also been stripped from having a chairperson position on the board. Look, it's one of those things. Good on him. I think that's the best thing that could have happened. It sets an example. I think we've got to be mindful that social media is an extremely powerful tool, and it needs to be respected. And just because you can cast out an opinion or something that you believe in very, very quickly within a matter of seconds to millions and millions of people, that doesn't mean that you should not consider the repercussions associated with your actions.
Did you see, hello Nonna, so Gary Alexander said Aureus loves Elon, don't talk on all our behalf. Gary, I don't know, maybe Gary and, come say good day, Gary, come on mate, come over here. Gary's the last one in the office. He deserves a spot on the show. Hello.
Has everyone missed me?
We all miss you, mate. We all miss
We've
you.
been putting your snippets up today, Gary.
Yeah,
Have you noticed that?
I'm famous.
You are famous, mate.
We value your input.
I like your hair today.
Thanks. It's all over the shop.
It's good stuff. There's Vilma.
Vilma's here. Hello, Vilma.
See you, everybody.
See
Catch you
ya.
later.
So, you mentioned social media is really powerful, right? Did you see, I don't know, 12 or 18 months ago, Kylie Jenner came out, right? And she's like a social media queen.
Yeah.
And she's come out and she said that Snapchat sucks now. And the price of Snapchat off that one tweet has just been getting smashed. It's just going down every single month since she said that. And it's like at its lowest now that it's ever been.
I think that's not just because of Kylie Jenner. And look, I've watched a lot of things around this as well. So I think it's important that we understand the significance of social media in the grand scheme of things. Now, we know that share price is not 100% linked to sentiment.
No.
Sentiment does drive short-term fluctuations in price, and I don't doubt that her tweet did have an impact on short-term price reflections of Snapchat as a business. I think that fundamentally the value model in which the money, the revenue model in which Snapchat has adopted is not what it was all stacked up to be. When we look at the valuation of these types of platforms, social media or other digital platforms, it's all based on users, average monthly users or actually average daily users, which has a direct flow-on effect to its valuation and its share price. So Kylie Jenner can't take all of the credit for.
I'm going to give her all of the credit. I like Kylie Jenner. She's good. She's good.
Yeah. But yeah, it is a factor. And look, further to that, look at these High Smile guys.
They've
well. Used people like Kylie Jenner, Conor McGregor, and like whenever you look at one of Conor McGregor's posts, High Smile is actually one of the top
always commenting.
So it just goes to show how they're using the power of piggybacking on, I guess, really celebrity status people to be able to either amplify or, in Elon's case, destroy the value of his business.
We've got clients. We've got clients who run retail businesses nearly completely off social media, and they do phenomenally well. So it is a growing landscape, and I think that people who understand it and can take advantage of it are going to continue to do very well out of it. And it will continue to change and adapt. It's probably going to become more difficult to do well out of.
Yeah.
It's look, I think it's one of these things that you mentioned before about the prices of shares and share markets sort of fluctuating between the real value of businesses and the sentiment towards that business. And that's why I think over the long term, we've seen the indexes of stock markets around the world continue to climb because the best businesses stay in there and they continue to grow. And over time, you get countries like America, Australia, New Zealand, all these places, England, and the businesses in those countries are going to continue to do well over time.
Yeah.
So a bet, if you buy Australian shares, the index of Australian shares, you're essentially betting that Australian business will do well for the foreseeable future, which is not a bad bet.
No, I think that's fair. Once again, we've just got to be mindful that the market does its thing and it will go up, down, sideways for periods of time. It's a long-term investment.
Absolutely.
Cool. So those are the main articles we wanted to go through. So we've got some questions that have come through. Now, for those of you who are watching, if you have any questions around anything, finance, business, wealth, investments, related to anything, feel free to chuck them up here and we're more than happy to run through them. But we've got plenty that come through during the week. So this is an interesting one. Funnily enough, this is the first time we've been asked this question. So I've heard stories about people making lots of money by investing in contracts for difference. Or also known as CFDs. I've been considering adding them to my portfolio, but would like to know a bit more about the risks involved. Can you give me some guidance?
There's a lot of risks involved.
Yeah. So let me explain what a CFD or a contract for difference is. Now, we need to understand that there are many different financial instruments that exist. You can buy shares, whether that be in a business, in a listed company, unlisted company. You can buy property, and also there are commodities. You can essentially buy options, futures, and other financial instruments that reflect essentially you're betting on, or you're acquiring an investment with the intention of it increasing in value. Now, a contract for difference, similar to other types of derivative products, are essentially manufactured with no real intrinsic value. It is essentially a bet with another investor on the direction that a particular asset or financial instrument is going to go. So you can have a contract for difference on shares. For example, I can make a bet with Sam that NAB shares are going to go up. He'll say, okay, I'm happy to take that bet thinking that NAB shares are going to go down. And depending on the terms of that bet, whichever direction it goes is who wins. And there are limitations to how far we can win or lose. And in some cases, there can be infinity losses. And there's been a lot of people that have landed themselves in a lot of hot water because they haven't really understood the severity or the significance of their actions. So I've written about contracts for difference and CFDs in my book. I did dabble with it when I was much younger and not as educated as I am today. And yes, there were some upsides, but there were some very, very substantial downsides. One story was basically there was a team of us in a team of advisors. We were all punting on CFDs. And on one day, we collectively lost about $50,000 together at the ripe old age of 20. So we lost a lot of money back then in the grand scheme of things. So it taught me a valuable lesson of the relationship versus risk versus return. Now, if you are talking about making a lot of money, there is going to be a relative amount of risk associated with that. So firstly, you need to get educated. You need to understand how this works. You then need to work out your tolerance to risk and your objectives. We believe you should take the least amount of risk in order to get to the outcome. And when you're looking at these types of investments, then you need to be willing to only put in money that you afford to lose. It is glorified gambling. And Daniel Pastro can attest, he knows this stuff like the back of his hand. CFDs is like spinning the roulette wheel.
And this is coming from a bloke who's a futures trader. He literally does this for a living, and he's saying it's a roulette wheel. So the average punter out there should probably not go near that.
If you're interested in these types of things, go check out Daniel Pastro's podcast. I think it's podcast number 3 on the Aureus Financial Enjoy the Journey podcast. We talk about more speculative types of investments that people like Daniel trade professionally for a living. And once again, take his words of wisdom because he does it every single day and has done so for the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, and I absolutely. And there's a few things I want to touch on. Our clients, we don't suggest that they use these sort of derivative instruments. It's they're way too complex, they're way too volatile, and you don't need to use them to achieve your goals. Now, if you're like Daniel and you're running a business that does it, then that's fine. But for 99.9% of people, you just don't need to use these sort of things. And there is an additional layer of risk to CFDs, Jackson. So a futures contract or an options contract is traded on a regulated exchange, right? So you are making a bet with someone else on the exchange. When you're trading in CFDs, you're actually making a bet with the provider, all right? So you put your money with a provider who sells CFDs, and you're making the bet against them. But the risk is, if the provider goes broke, you might not get your money. And this happened in England not too long ago. And everyone just lost their money because it was like a bookie going under. Do you know what I mean? So it's one of those things that, look, I probably wouldn't get involved with them. If someone's asking that they don't really understand what they are, then they definitely shouldn't be getting involved with them. What do you guys think? Do you guys like having a crack at futures or options or CFDs? It was sexy like years ago, this sort of stuff.
This is the thing back in the day. And yeah, we'd appreciate your insights. What do you think about this stuff? Do you understand what it is? Does it go over your head? Is it something that doesn't interest you at all?
Let us know.
Let us know.
Let us know. All right, so this is a question, property-related question. I want to buy my dream home, but I'm not sure whether I should sell my investment property or pay lender's mortgage insurance and hold both. What should I do? There's a couple of questions in there. So I guess, where do I start with this one? You need to work out what your goal is and how much you can actually afford to borrow, both based on your real income and expenses and how much you can afford to make in repayments and what the banks are willing to lend you as well. And then you need to look at the amount of equity that you have either in the property that you already own, the investment property, or the amount of cash that you saved up to go into the next one. So I'm going to answer this in a few parts. If you have an investment property and you need to sell it to get the deposit required to buy your dream home, you need to ask yourself, is the cost associated with selling the property and then buying a new one worth you buying your dream home? So if that's a big goal that you have in life, then I don't think that's a bad idea. If you have the capacity to keep your investment property and buy a dream home, then that's an even better idea. It's harder to do these days than it was in the past. And then the second part here is, should you pay lender's mortgage insurance? Now, lender's mortgage insurance, a lot of people, they hate it. It's one of these things that most people, when they're buying their first investment or they're buying their first home, they have to pay lender's mortgage insurance. Let me give you guys an example. Let's say it's 2013, the Sydney market's just getting ready to take off, and you want to buy a $500,000 unit in DY. You've saved a $50,000 deposit, so you might pay 10 grand in lender's mortgage insurance. Now, and let's say it's going to take you another 5 years to save that other 50 grand. Now, if you did pay lender's mortgage insurance, it would have cost you 10 grand, but you would have owned the property through the boom, and that property would probably be worth 900,000 today. All right, so spend an extra 10 and made about $400,000 in equity. Really good result. If you didn't buy the property and you saved that other 50 grand, now you're looking at buying a property that's worth 900 grand and you've got a $100,000 deposit, which is still just a little bit over 10%. So you're still paying lender's mortgage insurance, except now you're going to have a massive mortgage on it that you wouldn't have had 5 years ago. On the flip side, if you take out lender's mortgage insurance on a property in a market that's falling, then you're going to have a larger debt compared to the value of the property. So I think it's not whether lender's mortgage insurance is right or not. I think if it's part of your goals and part of your strategies, then it's a cost of doing business. I don't think the actual cost of lender's mortgage insurance should be too much of an influencing factor in what you do.
Yeah, so there's a couple of additional points that I'll make there. So many of the clients that we have coming to us that have an investment property and they're looking to upgrade in their home, the majority of their wealth is tied up in equity that's come from the investment. Now, what we need to understand is that we can't shift debt. So let's say we're using the investment property as collateral or security to be able to go buy the dream home. It means that we're going to have pretty much the smallest amount of debt on the investment property and the most amount of debt secured against the principal place of residence, which is a bad debt. We're paying for it in after-tax dollars. So in a lot of cases when we do the maths on it, although we're going to have to pay things like capital gains tax and we're going to have to pay agents fees and these types of things, by consolidating your situation, starting from scratch and then assuming you've got the borrowing capacity, then using the equity that you've now got in your home to then go buy another investment property can sometimes be the right way to go. But this is all about doing your numbers. Once again, compounding works best on bigger numbers. So if it works for cash flow and it makes sense, and we've got good quality assets over the long term, holding more wealth is going to result in more net wealth in the future. However, we need to understand that we're not kind of bending over backwards and really causing ourselves financial stress just because we're trying to hold on to as many properties as we can. We're starting to see a lot of clients approach us who do have 4, 5, 6, 7 investment properties, doing it extremely tough.
Yeah, cash flow is starting to
cash flow is biting them. Interest-only periods are coming up to maturity and going to principal and interest. We're starting to see that out-of-cycle rate increases are starting to have a flow-on effect to their month-to-month cash flow. Rental yields haven't been improving, and all of these things create a perfect storm. So we need to understand that property can't be sold quickly. So we should be selling it on our own terms as opposed to being forced to fire sell. So once again, this is about having a well thought out strategy. We have access to software that will help you work through all these scenarios. This particular client who asked the question, we're taking them through this at the moment. And we say, okay, these are all the different options that you've got. Keep both properties, sell the investment, buy the home, or sell the investment, buy a home, buy investment property. And basically guiding them through all of the pros and cons objectively based on the personal situation that they have. There's no one size fits all. There's no silver bullet for these types of situations. It all comes down to having the right strategy because it can make a huge difference in the context of your future plan. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's unique to every individual, absolutely. But one of the things that we're seeing at the moment, with especially on the northern beaches, with the property prices suffering, we're seeing that people that are living in a unit at the moment, and 12 months ago it might have been worth 800,000. Now their unit's worth 700,000, but they're looking at buying houses that used to be worth 1.5 mil. Now they're worth 1.2 mil, let's say. So both houses and units have dropped, but because the value of the unit is smaller, even though percentage terms it's exactly the same, the real number is smaller on the unit. So they're being able to get out of their unit and upgrading to a bigger home, and they're using the soft market as an opportunity to do so. And we're seeing that a lot. That's really becoming a big thing at the moment in the market.
Yeah, so important consideration. So next one we've got here. So I have a will that's been drafted by a public trustee. Is this just as effective as a will generated by a solicitor? Great question. So the public trustee is basically a government state-based service, and it essentially is meant to provide cost-effective estate planning solutions to people that otherwise couldn't afford the service. And typically speaking, they offer two solutions. They offer a paid solution where you pay them a couple $100, they do the will for you, and they put it into place. Or they've got another service where they don't charge you anything up front. However, there is a clause in the will where they charge a percentage of your estate in order to administer it if you pass away. Now, in some cases, that can be 2%. So if you have no money, then that could be a very low amount. However, for the majority of the people that we work with who are ambitious individuals, building wealth, have family homes, investment properties, shares, super, insurances, all of these things, sizable estates that are continuing to build and grow, 2% is a substantial cost. And once again, when we look at being in that situation, public trustee is a business. And because it is a business, they don't really show the same level of, I guess, care that a family member would when administering the same estate. Typically, the public trustee will sell down all of your assets to cash as quickly as possible, trying to resolve the estate so they can make their money. So we need to understand that it serves its role, but for affluent individuals, it is not typically the best way to approach your estate plan. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, we now offer a free will which is created by an estate planning specialist that does estate planning each day, every day, and we can now offer a compliant will for free with none of the conditions, no percentages on your estate, provide you the ability to appoint family members who are actually going to show a duty of care to execute and see through your wishes at no cost. Now, the only catch is you've got to be a member of the Wealth Mentor community. So if you're not already a member, make sure you do join. If you haven't taken advantage of this offer and you're part of the Wealth Mentor community, what the hell are you doing? Reach out to us. We'll guide you through it. We'll give you some insights. We'll help you get your basic will sorted. And then, of course, if you have a more complex situation, you've got asset protection issues, blended families, companies, trusts, all this kind of stuff, we'll actually get our estate planning team to give you some insights, complimentary, and let you know what you need to do to sort that out. So hopefully that's of value. We've got some feedback from Rando. G'day, Rando. Hope you're well, mate. It's a great program today, gents. Real valuable insights. Keep it up.
Thanks, mate.
Appreciate it, Rando. Now, does estate planning concern you? Do you actually have a will? For those of you who are watching,
it's one of those things though. Like everyone wants to do it, but everyone just puts it on the back burner and never does it.
Mate, we did it a couple of weeks ago.
Don't tell everyone that.
We've got to be honest.
We did. Look, we've done it a couple of weeks ago. I think because our situation has become more complex over the past 12 months, you know what I mean? And I think as you continue to accumulate wealth, then I think even your wills and your estate planning should become more comprehensive, because time goes on, you get married, you have kids, you have businesses, they're going to have grandkids, and it's just about getting it right.
Correct.
Look, one of these things, people put it off. Don't put it off, just do it.
No, exactly right.
Just do it.
All right.
So if anyone's got any questions who's watching, please shoot them out to us. So we've received a question this week from a client, another property question. I've been considering purchasing an investment property in the Sunshine Coast with the hopes that it will grow in value and I'll be able to sell it for a substantial return in the future. Is this a wise investment? So a couple of things. So if you are looking to purchase a property for an investment, yes, you should be looking for value growth, and then maybe selling it or releasing equity, using it for some strategic purpose in the future. That is a wise investment. Now, buying a property in the Sunshine Coast and wondering if that's a wise investment is the wrong way of going about it. So what you should be doing is you should be looking at where the opportunities are today, getting unbiased advice from a property investment professional, and then buying in those areas that are going to perform over the short to medium term and the long term. And I think picking a suburb or somewhere that you like, and then making all your research based around that is a little bit back to front. You should be going geographically macro, which states are performing well, out of the states that are performing well, which cities in that state are performing well, out of the cities in that state that are performing well, what are the best suburbs, what are the premium suburbs that are doing well right now, will do well over the medium term, and will do well over the long term as well. And I think that is the way you should be doing it. I think being very specific to an area without having a real research-backed decision as to why you chose that area is really risky, actually.
Yeah, it's speculating. And we see a lot of people doing this. They let emotion get into it. They go, I like the Sunshine Coast. It looks like a nice place.
Went to a holiday once.
Went to holiday there. It was great. And this is not the way we want to approach some of the biggest and potentially most significant investment decision that you're ever going to make. So when we look at the fundamentals that drive property, we've got net migration. Are people actually moving to the area? Is the population increasing? Is there a diverse range of employments where people are getting paid good household income that can actually afford property? Is there infrastructure and is there livability in play? Do people actually want to live there? What keeps them there? Then we've got supply. What properties are being built and constructed? And finally, affordability. What is the current affordability in that area, and can people afford to pay more for property? So these are 5 things that a good property buyer, property advocate, property advisor should be looking at. And this is what you pay them for. Because at the end of the day, they are able to show their objective expertise to help you find an asset that is going to perform. Now, is the Sunshine Coast going to perform? I don't know. It's about understanding those fundamentals. Not a matter of saying, just because I like the Sunshine Coast, it's going to go up in value. It's a matter of applying those 5 considerations and then using that to be able to make an informed decision, which typically only comes through expertise and employing a professional. So
absolutely. And I want to be very firm here that when you're talking about property investment advisors, you want to deal with people that have the flexibility to purchase anywhere in the country, so their view is unbiased. There's a lot of people who are property investment advisors who are selling units in a particular project or in a particular suburb, and that's all they have access to, and that's what they're selling. That doesn't mean that's the best area to invest in. That means that's the product that they have to sell. So you want to go with someone who's not selling a product, who's actually providing advice. And it's a very clouded area, and that's going to be the next thing after this Royal Commission that I think gets sorted out.
Definitely. Now we've got a question here from Booney Zamet. Thanks for the question. So within a small business, how would you maintain a steady income savings with a lot of expenses? It's a good question. And this is a lot of issues that a lot of small businesses face. Cash flow is one of the biggest killers for small business in Australia. And ultimately, this comes down to understanding your numbers, understanding the relationship of your income to expenses, and being able to, optimize your business to work in such a way where it allows you to have steady income savings. Now, the biggest problem for most small businesses is the roller coaster ride of revenue, right?
Absolutely.
They have a good month and they're followed by a crappy month and they get back on the horse and they have a good month. And this continues to go on these peaks and troughs. And the reason why is that most business owners are reactive, not proactive. They don't understand their numbers. They just do what they do best. They do their trade, they do their profession, they exercise their expertise, they get paid for it, and they start the cycle all over again. So in order for you to get control of your cash flow, to be able to have constant savings, there's a couple of things you need to do. You need a strategy. You need a strategy of what are you actually working towards, how much profit or savings do you require to achieve your goals. If you can align your purpose to the vision of what you're trying to create, you stand a higher likelihood of being able to stick the course. Secondly, you need to understand, are you pricing effectively? So are you running a sustainable value proposition? Does your pricing allow you to create the level of savings considering your profit on a job-by-job basis or on a service-by-service basis, depending on what type of business you've got? And how much work do you actually need to have to hit your goal? And then essentially, are there any expenses that are not directly linked to your ability to produce profit? Is there dead weight that you are carrying that otherwise is not adding any value in pursuit of your goals? So we go through with our clients through this exercise. We go through a business planning exercise. We get them to map out their journey in their business from an aspirational level. What are you trying to achieve? What do you do best? How do you compare to your competition? What's your pricing strategy, marketing strategy, operational strategy, all of these things. We then go and do a profit and loss. We go through and we map out what are the income expectations, what are our expenses, both variable and fixed expenses, and how much profit should we have? And then we then track the budget versus the actual. And then we continue to optimize and grow. We do this all with technology. And once again, you can only influence what you measure. If you are not measuring your finances, if you don't understand your numbers, if you're not tracking this stuff, if you don't have the right safety nets and accountabilities in place, it is going to be extremely difficult for you to hit your financial goals in business and personally. It's not as daunting as you think. We take a very simple approach and essentially just guide you through the process. So if this is something that you want to do, we can guide you through it from start to finish. So just feel free to reach out to us.
And we do this all in our own business, mate. Jackson spend a lot of time looking at all this stuff. We're, just having this conversation now reminds me that we're already forecasting our income accurately for, January, February, and that's next year, that's 2019. And we're thinking that far ahead of, what we need to do today to hit those revenue targets that are in, 5 or 6 months' time.
Yeah.
And I think all business owners should be doing that, but majority of business owners are only looking at, today, maybe towards the end of the week, next week, and then that's it. But for most businesses, the pipeline to take you from, where you are today and the work you need to do today to bank money tomorrow, it's longer than one day. So you need to really forecast out, and then it goes back into filling up the funnel from the top. So how much marketing do you need to do to get X amount of inquiries? And then out of those inquiries, how many of them will turn into work? And then out of those that turn into work, how many will you complete? And you work backwards from there. And it's a bit of planning, but that's how you kick the goals.
Exactly right. Now, Shane Black, are you too late? You're never too late, Shane Black. You're always just in time.
You always show up at just the right moment, Shane Black. You're like the Queen. You're never late. You're never early. You're always right on time.
I love that. All right, everyone. So those are the main things we had for today. We appreciate your contribution. Now, if you are watching this when we do go off our live event, please feel free to post your comments, post your questions, and we'll make sure that we get in touch with you and we cover them off next week. So we will see you same place, same time next Wednesday.
Thank you very much.
Take it easy.
See you guys. Thanks, Booney.